For Global Business Update, Michael Wilson joins us now from London. Good morning, Michael.
Morning. Amazing what some calming words can do, actually. Shares in Asia Pacific mostly higher after the meeting between the US president and the president of China as well. They had relatively mollifying words to say to each other. I'll give more of that in a second. Hong Kong's Hang Seng thus up over 3%. Hong Kong Tech up over 6%. Mainland China, the Shanghai Composite advanced as well, even though the country's industrial production and retail sales data fell short of expectations. In Australia as well, the ASX 200 slipped about 0.1%. South Korea's Kospi about flat, basically. Let me take you to Japan just briefly. The economy shrank after the slide in the yen. Now, the wires were saying, and the business sites were saying this morning, unexpectedly. I don't see what's unexpected about the economy shrinking there, because if you've got a weaker yen, you're paying more for imports, and it is a net importing country, then what's the big surprise? Anyway, GDP down about 1.2%. However, economists do believe that the world's third largest economy will actually avoid recession and bounce back next year. So on to that meeting between China's president and the president of the United States. Biden said there was no need for a new Cold War. That was after a 3-hour meeting with President Xi. 3-hour summit. I don't think there's any imminent attempt by China to invade Taiwan, said Joe Biden, despite a lot of the rhetoric and the escalating rhetoric that we've actually seen as well. What they're hoping is the two countries will get together, get back on the track of steady development. That's what they're saying at the moment. So basically, as far as the US is concerned, then, a recap of yesterday. The ended, a lot lower yesterday, quite honestly, because hopes that the Fed might not be acting so quickly. But hang on just one second. I'm going to bring you some interesting stuff about that in just a moment. People were actually buying Taiwan Semiconductor, Louisiana Pacific, and Paramount jumped after Warren Buffett had said that his Berkshire Hathaway fund had taken interesting positions and raised stakes in those. The Dow Jones fell about 200 points. Basically, I think one of the reasons that the market's falling in the States, apart from the normal volatility, is that this week is not going to reveal a tremendous amount of information, because we're beyond the brunt of the earnings season. Now, on to the Fed, and Lael Brainard, who's the vice chair of the Fed, was saying yesterday it may be soon to be appropriate to move to a slower pace of rate hikes. Now, she's actually been quite well known in the past for taking a relatively hawkish view. So I think that when she says something like this, then the markets actually take notice. Amazon is reportedly, this is what reports are saying, laying off 10,000 employees starting this week. They would be the largest cuts in the company's history. And if you remember last week, we were talking about headcount cuts in Meta and Twitter, also laying off staff. Twitter, a slightly different case, but generally speaking, a lack of ad benefits. In this country, again, still looking forward to the 17th, which isn't that far away, for the autumn statement. It looks like now that there will be a windfall tax on energy generators, which replaces the industry revenue cap. Again, technicalities, but basically the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, the finance minister, is looking towards raising about 40 billion off and on, basically, from all this. And the existing energy profits levy goes up from 25 to 35%. I think what's happening here is that what he's trying to do, and what he's trying to do with the Prime Minister as well, is show that that the UK is once again credit-worthy and responsible. However, the idea that somehow the OBR, the Office of Budget Responsibility, is the sole arbiter of what actually the UK needs, I think is probably slightly mistaken. There are plenty of forecasting agencies. I did go into in the past why this was set up in the first place. It was more of a political trap than anything else. However, that said, the CBI was saying yesterday that it's all right doing all this recession and austerity stuff, but you've got to give people hope and in investing into the UK, and the fact that taxes need to go down at some kind of stage, maybe not in the sort of rush that Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng were proposing a few months ago. Maybe it needs to be more regular than that. But really, it's the tail wagging the dog with the OBR. What needs to happen, I think, anyway, at least, is the Chancellor and the Prime Minister to get together and form some policies of their own. You do need to get back on the credit worthiness route, but not at the expense of the economy. What changes? It's just it's a bit like COVID, really, isn't it? UK unemployment up. These are the latest figures, up to 3.6%. Regular pay, though, down 2.7%. So we're not far away from a wage price spiral, quite honestly, despite what people say. That could still happen. Oil crude prices softened a little bit, but warmer weather across Europe has helped oil and gas. But then again, that could change, fairly rapidly as the winter draws on. That is the global view.
Real quickly, Michael, I'm going to ask another question I've asked for like 2 weeks, but it's because I'm not getting an answer. That's why I keep asking it. What is the size really of this black hole? And I'll tell you why. Jeremy Hunt was speaking, I think it was the FT or thereabout, and he was talking about another 100 billion in deficits. From 50 billion, we've moved to 55 billion, and they're talking about settling on 100 billion budget deficits between 2026 and 2027. Secondly, he's increased willful tax on electricity companies. Isn't that going to have a backlash? Thirdly, he said social services will be cut tremendously. And that's why I keep asking, what is the extent of this black hole? In the conversation before, I didn't hear about this 100 billion deficits for budgets.
Neither did I, to be honest. And if it had been said to me, I wouldn't have taken any notice of it, any more than I take notice of what the size of the black hole, the so-called black hole, is. You know what a black hole is, of course, don't you? In outer space, what it means is that everything vanishes into it. And I think there's a lot to be said. It's a useful bit of journalese. It doesn't mean anything. Black hole means nothing. If you really want to know what's happening, I think that logic and the rest of it and expectation and forecast sort of vanished into that black hole. It depends who you listen to. I've been talking about this for the past couple of days, really, with various sorts of people on various media outlets. And the fact of the matter is that nobody really knows what that black hole is. It depends how you calculate it. If you say that inflation is going to take care of the kind of expenses, and you set savings against that, and you can really set this out any way you actually like. I think what all we need to see, I think, on the 17th, I'm sure there'll be lots of mentions of black holes and how it'll be plugged and all the rest of it. For me, the important thing is to get the UK back away from that bad old time of that disastrous mini budget and get back onto so that the rest of the world is saying the UK, it's got its problems just like everybody else in the world's got problems, and they do. Make no mistake about that. Everybody is going through the same kind of stuff. They may not admit it, but they are. But I think that if they can get the positivity of the markets behind them, and again, that I don't like that kind of stuff. I do feel as though asking the markets to respond in a certain way is once again the tail wagging the dog. But this is what politicians have to do. And I think that after November the 17th, if it can be shown, that one way or another, and if it has to be the OBR, then it has to be the OBR, provided those sums actually add up, and provided there is a feeling around the rest of the world that the UK is once again seen to be creditworthy and getting onto financial orthodoxy again, no bad thing. I do not believe that the way to growth is higher taxes, but I think there's a time and a place for those sort of reductions, and it might not be right now. So I think you have to get your credibility back and then start to work towards proper growth, as the CBI, the bosses organisation, was suggesting yesterday.
Well, Michael, a number of things. Let's start with the G20 in Bali, Indonesia. Well, we're told the theme this year is one Earth, one future, one, mankind. That's pitching at the theme of equality. Is the world really equal? Considering the fact that the G20 countries that are meeting control about 85% of the GDP of the total humankind. And then Brazil, India is going to assume the presidency this year, followed by Brazil next year. The issues at the G20, maybe you want to comment on that. That's one. Number two, the US president and the Chinese president Xi Jinping met on the sidelines of the Bali 17th summit of the G20. And they said they will keep the communication lines open. Antony Blinken is going to visit China. Really, does this really mean anything? Would that stop the US from continuing to fight China and vice versa? And, the Chinese, they've made it very clear that Taiwan is a red line that must not be crossed. And the Americans have also said, no, our strategic interest with regard to Taiwan, is important to us. So really, 3.5 hours meeting, what really came out of it? And then third, the Department of Commerce in the US has, downgraded Russia, as an economic partner or as an economy, particularly with regard to anti-dumping proceedings. What are the implications of this? And finally, by way of comment, I know you always said on this program that London will remain a strategic financial destination and capital in Europe. But the reports are now saying that France has overtaken the UK and that the London Stock Exchange has fallen behind as a result of recession. You still hold on to that, your belief that London is the main capital of finance in Europe?
I do, and I tell you why. I tell you why I do, because France has overtaken it, but not by a great amount. And that figure is only in the hundreds of thousands of pounds. If you look at the actual figures, and it is marginally bigger, but it's only marginally bigger. And I think that will change. My faith in London is simply because because people around the world say it is. B, because the legal system is transparent and friendly, and also my word is my bond still actually works. Yes, there are scandals and all the rest of it, but you get those all the time, because that's what arbitrage of knowledge is all about. And unfortunately, that happens as well. And I think that France actually will be seen to reflect what's actually happening in the country, which is not good. The country is disintegrating, and no question about that. If you don't believe me, by all means go to Paris and have a look at the outskirts of Paris and see what's happening there. And also the structural changes within France are not acting in the favour of government or finance. They're acting in favour of the people who don't want to work a great deal, and that's continuing to happen in France. So I think that whilst it has, I saw the headlines. It's a marginal amount, and I don't think it really makes an enormous amount of difference. It could change next week. I may be wrong, but my faith is on the back of other people around the world in different kind of countries wanting to use London for their financial stuff. As far as G20 is concerned, it's all talk, isn't it? I mean, when they used to be called G7s, then there was a G8, then Russia got out. G20 was expanded because it takes into account, the sort of size of the world's economy that you're talking about. Does it make an enormous amount of difference? It's not unhelpful to have the presidents of China and the United States meeting on the sidelines, and it's not unhelpful for them to stop rattling their sabers very, very slightly indeed. This is pretty obvious stuff. What it means for the future, I don't know. I happen to believe that China would like to be, however big it manages to be in the near future, I think it needs to be seen to be part of the world's economic framework. If not, I don't really see why it's bothering. I don't think it's going to become a hermit kingdom at all, in the same way that Russia is. And on Russia, we just do not know what's happening within that country. They're coming up with all sorts of claims about the war against Ukraine. We don't know how powerful or not Putin is. We don't know how powerful. We don't know whether he's going to be subject to a coup. It's practically, as people would say here, uninvestable. And I still go along with that.
Thank you so much for your time, Michael.